Hi, my name is Grace Fenech, and today I'll be presenting an informative summary by Megan Bartles on humans have crossed 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries. To introduce myself, I am currently a junior studying chemical engineering at Wayne State University. I have been an intern the past 2 summers at a company called Parker Lord. I'm an application engineering intern there. My focus is primarily in adhesives, and I work a lot with the automotive industry. I have a big passion for efforts in sustainability. I am planning on taking some future electives in sustainability classes, and I'd also like my future career to be focused on helping the environment. The purpose of this is just to summarize Bartles' article on planetary boundaries, kind of go over what these boundaries are and what steps are being taken to prevent further damage from being done. So an overview, again, we're going to talk about what are the planetary boundaries and why they matter. Then we're going to go into two different sections. First, the planetary boundaries that we have passed at this point, and then we're going to go into the planetary boundaries that have not been crossed at this point. We're going to talk about future steps and actions that are being taken to prevent these boundaries from becoming worse, and then we're just going to talk about everything we talked about at the very end. So what are planetary boundaries and why do they matter? So planetary boundaries consist of 9 set limits that have been set by scientists to determine how habitable the ecosystem is. These limits were based on initial recordings from the Holocene epoch. So the Holocene epoch lasted about 10,000 years, and after those 10,000 years we kind of saw the beginning of the industrial era. And with the industrial era we had lots of humans causing damage to the environment through factories, chemicals being released in the air, and using more natural resources. And that's why these limits are set here, because during the Holocene epoch we hadn't seen a lot of change in our environment until that industrial era began. At this point, currently in time, we have passed 6 out of 9 boundaries, and some of these boundaries are kind of entwined together. So first, for example, we're going to talk about phosphorus and nitrogen flow, and then we're going to talk about climate change. And phosphorus and nitrogen flow affect climate change. So they kind of work together and make each other worse, unfortunately. And this causes global warming. So at the very end, we're going to look at solutions that need to be made to reverse or prevent further damage from being made. And it's really important that we focus on this, because without focus on this, we might create a planet that is uninhabitable. So the 6 past boundaries. First, we have phosphorus and nitrogen flow in the environment, which is probably the most important. This focused primarily on pesticides and chemicals that are released into the air, and this affects animals, it affects plants, and then in turn affects us. And then we have climate change, which in this article primarily focuses on CO2 concentration. CO2 concentration is 67 parts per million above what it should be. And with that, we see a big change in global warming, which is why we see it on the news so often. And then we have biosphere diversity, which is mostly biodiversity. And we have seen a decrease in biodiversity, so less animals, less plants. And with that, it affects us as well. We have novel entities. So novel entities are artificial chemicals that are released into the air. And the focus on this is the limit is just safe chemicals being released that are allowed. And a lot of companies and factories release unsafe chemicals in the air, which hurts us. So we are above the limit. There's not really a limit. It's just safe versus unsafe chemicals. We have land use. We are 15% above the land use that we should be using, so we have lost 15% of our precious land. And then we have freshwater use, which is split into blue water and green water. Blue water is like fresh water and groundwater, and green water is just non-aquified water that plants still can get. And we are using too much of this, and it is well above the limit than what it should be. 3 on past boundaries. We didn't go into depth into this in the article, but there are 3 of them. So we have atmospheric aerosol, oxide acidification, and ozone depletion. And the thing that they did focus on in the article is that ozone depletion is actually improving due to efforts that we have made to help it. So our ozone, because of action that has been taking, is actually healing itself. So it is possible to reverse some of these effects from getting to the point they are, but we have to take action before we see it getting worse. So future steps. These boundaries, and this was very emphasized in the article, that these boundaries only set a guideline so that we can understand, what they are and where we are, but they mean nothing without taking initiative. So scientists' next course of action is to create solution at each individual boundary to try to reverse the damage if possible, but if not, to just maintain where it is at the moment. And it is said that if we do cross all 9 boundaries, we face creating a planet that is uninhabitable and damages our ecosystem. So the goal is to try to reverse them or maintain them before they get to that point so we don't create a planet that we can't even live on. So, to summarize, at this point we have crossed 6 out of 9 boundaries. Of the 6, we have most concern for the phosphorus and nitrous flow, and again, that in turn can cause other things like climate change. At this time, there are 3 uncrossed boundaries, with 1, ozone depletion, reversing from the negative effects that we have seen it in previous stages. And we need to take action to avoid these irreversible effects and to overall avoid crossing all 9 boundaries at some point. Thank you guys for listening. I really enjoyed presenting on this topic, and any questions?